often ask me to tell them a bit about the goddesses, and I love them, so I love to do that. I'm going to reference two of them in particular today, and they're well known, but you may not know, you might not have a relationship with them, and maybe this will encourage you to want to know them a little bit better. But first, I always start by saying that I have heard from some students on occasion, and some friends as well, that they feel a little uncomfortable with the idea of all of the Hindu gods, because they've been raised and believe that there's one God, and that's challenging for them to open themselves up and be receptive to this idea that there are 330 million of them. What it comes down to is that really there's not a conflict here. Indian mythology very much believes that there's one God energy, however we want to call that, but that it's so vast and it's so powerful, and they want to have a relationship with this God, that they have recognized all these different attributes. And so there's kind of like a different God that sort of represents all these different powers and energies, but it's really the one God. So how you view that one God kind of depends upon how you've been raised, lineage that you've been raised in, family traditions, and also just sort of how you personally see things. And I liken it to going to a concert. So it's summertime here now, a lot of people go to outdoor concerts. So let's say you're sitting on the grass. You've got one view of the artist and the stage and the concert. But if you're sitting down in the seats and off to the side, you have a totally different view. And if you're sitting very close to the stage, you have yet a different view. And what if your friend just came home and told you about the concert? Now you have a totally different experience. So it's kind of the same way. There's that one performer, right? But all these different people are having a different experience of it. Part of that comes through a lineage of history. So at different times, and sometimes simultaneously, that one deity might be considered to be Vishnu, who's in charge of everything, creating and sustaining and dissolving and transforming. Somebody else thinks, no, it's a trilogy. There's Brahma and Vishnu and Shiva, and they're in charge of those different cycles of life. Others say that it's Shiva, who also has this power to do all. Around the 6th century, 6th to 8th century, there developed a Shakta tradition in which the belief was that the power, the expression of the one divine energy, was actually coming through the goddesses. And so there's a goddess tradition. Sometimes that's affiliated with Sri Vidya, but you can call it just the Shakta tradition. So many of the myths that involve the power of the goddesses evolve out of this period. There are a couple of them that I want to show you today that appear quite different, and I'm going to ask you which one you might be drawn to, which one you might like to kind of hang out with or spend time with or kind of have on your side. So one of them is Lakshmi. And you may have heard of her. She is associated with the idea of prosperity and beauty. Sometimes the word Shri, which means auspicious, it means making the world better. So, all likelihood, we would kind of like to hang out with her. My question to you is, what about Kali? Okay. The first time, or the first many times I saw these images of Kali, I wanted nothing to do with her. She really scares me, or she did. Now I absolutely love her. But she's really, really scary looking. I mean, she's fierce. Her tongue is hanging out, dripping blood, right? She's got this garland of skulls around her neck. Her skirt are arms that are hanging there. It's frightening. It's like, do you want to be in this energy? And the answer is actually yes. Because we need both of these. And we need both of those types of energies. There are times where we need ferocity. There are times when we need steadfast determination. there are times when we've got to get down and dirty and get the hard things done. And as much as I love Lakshmi and her sweetness and her serenity, there are times that you need Kali. So I'm going to give you just a little background about one of the myths, and there are so many, and I encourage you to kind of look for books on them, Google them. A good way, believe it or not, to start with them, if you're unfamiliar with them, is actually to get children's books of the myths. They're a delight. They kind of simplify the stories and give you a taste, and then you can go further on in your explorations. So one of the myths is called the myth of churning the milky ocean of consciousness. And as the story goes, both the demons and the gods want this elixir of immortality called Amrita. And it's said that it's at the bottom of the milky ocean of consciousness. And so they decide that they're both going to try to get it. And the only way for that to happen is if they actually create a tug of war that starts churning up the waters. And so you've got the demons on one side and the gods on the other, kind of like those stories of having the good wolf and the bad wolf on your shoulder, right? And so this churning up of the milky ocean brings up a lot of things. Now it brings up some treasures, it brings up jewels, it brings up a tree that never stops flowering, it brings up the kamadhenu, who is the wish-fulfilling cow, and it brings up Lakshmi. So Lakshmi rises up on a stem, sitting on a lotus, as lovely as can be, in spite of the fact that she's come out of this turmoil and this muddy bottom. She is unscathed. She is this sort of purity and beauty that is so lovely. Problem is that when you do this churning and you've got the demons and the gods going at it with each other things churn up. And so poisons churn up. Hala hala, it's called. And to protect the world from these poisons, Shiva swallows the poison. But if it goes all the way down into his body, and this philosophy is taking that Shiva is all three powers of creation, sustenance, and transformation, if Shiva swallows this poison, the world as we know it is going to end. So Parvati, or Shakti, grabs his throat and prevents it from coming down into his belly so life can continue on. That's the good news. The bad news is the demons still exist, and demons do demon stuff, and they create a lot of problems. We tend to have them inside as well. So when we call upon these goddesses to help us out in our challenges, it could be external challenges, it could be internal challenges. So there are times where Kali has to arise. And the demons are very clever, and they do what's called tapas. Tapas means that they are doing all of their austerities. They're making all of their efforts. They're doing everything right that demons do. We may not agree with them, but they're doing their demon stuff really well. So they get rewarded with boons, and they ask for what they want. They ask for immortality. That never gets granted. But they do get the next best thing. They usually ask for things like, okay, I don't want to be killed by a god or a man. I don't want to be killed at any time of day or night, things like that. And the boon gets granted because they've done all of this tapas. They've done all of their work. So now the problem is, how do we get rid of these demons that are so powerful and are, creating havoc in our world? Well, the demons forgot to ask not to be killed by a woman. So the gods go, all right, we've tried everything. We've tried all of our weapons. Individually, we have tried, and we cannot get rid of these demons. But we know who can. And they call upon Kali. Sometimes her sister Durga, or sometimes Durga and Kali are interchanged. Sometimes they say one came out of the other. There's a lot of ferocity there. And what the gods do is each of them give Kali their weapons. So not only does Kali have her own powers, she's affiliated with darkness and creation and time and dissolution, But now she has all of the weapons of all of the gods. So she goes after the demons, and she wipes them out. Sometimes it's a difficult battle, but always, just like the Netflix series, I love them, the Marvel series on Netflix, okay, it is always bigger than life, good against evil. There's always complications, there's always problems, and good always prevails. It makes me feel so good. I love the myths too. Now the myths are sort of intentional lies, fabricated stories that are meant to teach us bigger life lessons. So in this situation with Kali, sometimes it is said, and again, it depends on where you're coming from, your stance, your history, what you like to believe, and how you like to approach the iconography and how you like to approach the mythology. But sometimes it's said that these heads are not necessarily the garland of the demon's heads, although they may be, that the demon is actually a vidya, or our forgetfulness, that we are a part of that source of the ocean of consciousness. We forget because the more developed we become, the more rich and complex our lives become, the more we're kind of removed from that remembering that connection. And so sometimes it's said that what Kali is actually destroying is our forgetfulness, that we are that one energy. And so that, when Kali does her work, destroying forgetfulness, brings us back to the lovely peace and serenity of Lakshmi. And so they're both relevant to us, and we want to befriend both of them. We want them in our lives. So there are ways that we can connect with them. We can just look at their pictures. Sometimes that's really evocative and sets in play a whole thought process for us, and that can be enough, or read about them or read their myths. Or we can do mudras and mantras to help us connect with them. So what I'd like to do is offer 2 mudras for Kali. One evokes her ferocity, and the other, after her ferocity, cools us, calms us down, which she also needs. This is actually what is happening in her image. It looks like she is standing upon Shiva, if you would know that as Shiva, or standing upon a man who looks like he's dead. He's actually not, and she hasn't killed him. Shiva, her beloved, comes and lies down under her, or some say that he lays down, and in her rage, because she can't calm down and quiet down from this ferocity, she winds up stepping on him, looks down and sees him, and realizes, oh, yes, I can quiet now, I can calm now. So the other mantra, the second mantra, will bring us to that calmer, quieter place. First mudra is called Kali Mudra, and you may know it from your yoga practice. It's hands interlaced, first finger up, and you might notice that the thumbs are crossed. Okay? This upward facing finger can kind of represent some of the weapons that she carries, like the sword that she carries to kind of cut off the demons' heads, right? So I'm going to take a little look again. Okay. The mudra, and you won't necessarily have to remember it, but you can look it up. And in fact, this is an excellent book called Awakening Shakti by Sally Kempton. And these particular mudras, I took word for word, mantras, I took word for word from her book. There are a lot of versions, and so you might like this one, or you might like some other mantras that you might find as well. So again, Kali Mudra. And when Kali has all of her weapons that she's received from all of the gods, she's called chamundaye. And so this mudra, this mantra, calls forth that. So it's Om, Aim, Hreem, Kleem, chamundaye, viche, svaha. It's kind of a mouthful, and we're not here together in the room to go call and response. I'll say it one more time and then I'll just give you a brief explanation and then we'll go on to the next one. So it's Om, Aim, Hreem, Kleem, chamundaye, viche, svaha. So what it means, the first sounds are seed mantras. They're sounds that start to vibrate the energy of Kali to come forth. Chamundaye, as I said, is the name that we give to Kali when she has all of her weapons, when she's incredibly fierce and ferocious. Viche is a cut-through kind of word, so it sort of represents what she does. And svaha is this offering up towards the transformation in our hearts. So that's mantra 1 and mudra 1. The next one is called Kaleshvara mudra, and it begins with the fingers curled in, and then the middle fingers coming up, and the thumbs touching. And I'm just going to turn this down so you can see what it looks like from the thumb side. In a way, it looks a little bit like a heart in there, between the space between the hands. This one uses 3 seed sounds. It uses Krim, hum, hreem. Krim, hum, hreem. Krim, hum, hreem. Krim calls forth Kali. Hum gathers the energy, and then hreem brings back the sweetness. And so when she needs to be standing on Shiva after her ferocity and she just can't calm down, she's drunk with power, then this mudra and mantra can bring back the sweetness. So it's Krim, hum, hreem. Krim, hum, hreem. And perhaps when you do that and when you try it, you may feel a sense of grounding or a sense of cooling or a sense of quieting. And that brings us back to the sweetness of Lakshmi. Now Lakshmi, sitting on that lotus, the lotus stem goes all the way down. Her root goes all the way down to the ocean of consciousness. That place that is unchanging and undisturbed by all of the waves. So when we connect with Lakshmi, we too connect with our root that reminds us that we too are a part of that serenity. We're also part of the fury and the complexity and the busyness and the wildness of life, all of the rasas, all of the tastes. But there's something very sweet about remembering that we are connected to that root in such a sweet and pure way. So Lotus Mudra, heels of the hands come together, and the other fingers, the thumbs can touch or not, that's kind of an optional thing, but all the other fingers spread apart. This is called Padma Mudra. You might be familiar with it. And you can kind of look down and there's a little space between the heels of your hands. And you can envision that that is where the root goes down. And if you hold this in front of your heart, then you can remember that you're rooted into your heart and that your heart is then rooted down into the depths of the ocean of consciousness where it is still and beautiful. So we're going to call up Lakshmi, and her seed sound is shrim. So just like Om is said to hold all of the sounds, if you call out the seed sound or even say it internally of any of these goddesses, you're awakening that energy inside of yourself. So her seed sound is shrim, and so her mantra is Om Shrim Laskshmyai Namah. Om Shrim Laskshmyai Namah. Om Shrim Laskshmyai Namah.